Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back. Tonight, we're going to be sort of getting something off of my to do list. So many people have asked me about Charles Hall and the tall white alien stories. Now, we did an investigative piece quite some time ago in which I went to the National Personnel Records Center. For those unaware, anybody who claims military service, you can get their records provided you have certain information like their uh, date of birth and legal name, etc. And I made those requests along with another researcher. We'll share the details of some of that tonight. And both of those requests came back that Mr. Charles Hall, whose entire story begins with "When I was in the Air Force," both of the information requests of myself and several other researchers all came back from the National Personnel Records Center as no records available, meaning it apparently or allegedly Mr. Charles Hall was never actually in the Air Force. Now, things get quite curious. And I guess I should give a brief synopsis of his story. His story is essentially that he was in the Air Force and he went to certain training classes as detailed in his books, a training class to be a weather observer for the United States Air Force. And then he was stationed at a base to be a weather observer after going to a weather observer class. By the way, we checked, those classes are logged. Like if you went to the class at the date and time that you said, his name should be there. His name is absent from all those records. There's even a graduating class photo for that weather observer class in the Air Force. No Charles Hall, no picture, no name. Now, several people have offered explanations. Maybe he was sick that day. His name would still be printed. It's not there. So Mr. Charles Hall is the originator. This is very important. All throughout the UFO community, there are people who will tell you stories of so-called tall white aliens. But it's important to note that the origin story, where did everybody suddenly get the idea of tall white aliens from? Well, it came from the originator of the story, Charles Hall, who again claimed that he interacted with these aliens while in the Air Force as a weather observer. But if you research his claimed military service, it seems like those claims completely and totally fall apart under scrutiny. Then the story sort of gets more curious in that Mr. Charles Hall mentioned one birth date in his books, and there's a separate birth date that another researcher was able to discover on his Facebook page, a different birth date. So the reason that the records request could have come back no records was a wrong birth date. So additional records requests were made and research attempts were made by the National Personnel Records Center for both birthdays. And again, they come back that Charles Hall was never in the Air Force. And what's curious about this is that he appears to have pictures of himself in Air Force uniforms and things like that. Interestingly, I think that the whole story rests on his credibility. How many times have we seen a story sold on the credibility of a military eyewitness? That's the way Mr. Charles Hall has sold his stories. And let's be clear, Mr. Charles Hall has written numerous books, got a Netflix documentary film deal, and more, and has been a fixture at UFO conventions, conferences, etc. Now, originally, when I first researched this story, I thought that Mr. Charles Hall was committing a felony. After all, there's the Stolen Valor Act. And every time he would sell a book or accept money while claiming that he was a member of the Air Force, I thought that was a felony. But it turns out it's only a felony if you claim certain medals like the Medal of Honor or the Purple Heart. And it appears that the United States government does very little to prosecute people who simply pretend to be United States Air Force members. We saw a big run of people pretending to be Navy SEALs after the Bin Laden stuff, and SEAL popularity was at an all-time high, suddenly there was all of these people claiming to be Navy SEALs with, alien stories or secret space stories. None of those people, to my knowledge, have been prosecuted for pretending to be a Navy SEAL and profiting from their deception and fabrications of military service. But the fact remains that Charles Hall's entire story begins and ends with when I was in the Air Force. So the interesting part to this story to me, however, is that even though the very seed of it, the root of this story is based in deception, this has not stopped other people from tacking on or borrowing the tall white aliens. Throughout my time in UFO and conspiracy land, I've seen so many people talk about the tall white aliens. Michael Sala talks about them, Corey Good, David Wilcock, Linda Moulton Howe, and many, many more people tell stories about tall white aliens. And I wonder, did any of them actually do the research that we've done here that will reveal to you that the whole seed of the story is based on a lie, apparently? Now, interestingly, I just found out previously when I researched this story, I reached out to Charles Hall on Facebook and I said, hey, your whole story begins with you being in the Air Force. We went to the Air Force and they say they have no records of your service. Can you explain this? He told me that I couldn't get his records because I didn't have a need to know, and only people with a need to know would get his records. Unfortunately, that's not the way this works. If you're a member of any armed services, any member of the public can at least get confirmation of your service from the National Personnel Records Center. You don't have to have a need to know. And in fact, Mr. Hall was very confrontational with me and then blocked me on Facebook. But for whatever reason, I just found out he has unblocked me. I believe, if this is the proper account that we have found here, and that would be Charles James Hall on Facebook. It's got all, pictures. It appears to be his. So I wrote to him earlier today and I said, I'm going to share this. And by that, I mean the research materials, which I'll be sharing with all of you tonight. I'm going to share this on my show at 9 p.m. interest. Care to comment? I'd like to include any comment or rebuttal from you in fairness. And I gave him the research materials that were provided by Robert Cole, a military records expert and former United States Marine member. You may be familiar. May be familiar with him. He was a previous guest here and has helped us to bust many a stolen valor fraud. So essentially, Richard Cole, I brought him in. I asked him, due to my own, I guess you could call it crazy. I don't know. I don't want to accuse somebody of being a stolen valor fraud unless we do all of our due diligence and all of the evidence proves or indicates that they are indeed a stolen valor fraud. So I brought in Mr. Cole, who's an expert in military records and a former United States Marine, and I asked him to go after me and see if he could get any different results, knowing that he is much more expert at me at going after people's military records and verifying them. So that's exactly what I did. You may recognize Mr. Cole. He has been a previous guest here who has helped us to investigate claims of military service. I do believe that Mr. Cole would be considered an expert witness in any court of law when it comes to military records. So what we've got here is a multi-researcher effort, not just myself, but several other people, including Mr. Cole, trying to get Mr. Charles Hall's military records. And we're going to share the results of that investigation. Now, this has been some time coming. I apologize. I also apologize. Apparently, I got my dates mixed up, and I had previously agreed to do a show with a guest tonight, and I apologize for that. I forgot to put it on my calendar, and so I sincerely apologize. We're going to reschedule that one and bring that guest in here anytime next week. I have a completely open schedule. So Just realizing too that I am once again a terrible show host, because though I have the research materials here to share with all of you, I did not put it in the description of the video, and I'm going to be doing that right now. I'm just going to put research cited and a link to this if you want to follow along or research on your own, read this on your own. We would welcome that. We make it a point to share our research, and anybody can use that research in their own content creation. We try to be a public benefit here. But before we begin, actually, let me take a moment to welcome in the live chat. And also, I just want to make an announcement. We had all these problems with having too many chat room moderators, and everybody wanted their wrench back after I decided to just let it be the Wild West. And then I said, no, we just need one moderator in case anybody is really getting abusive or nasty or really needs to be muted or timed out. But then I made the decision that it would be fine to have two. Now I've given somebody else their wrench back. All of the moderators, number one, have to get along, or I'm going to go back to just no moderators. And secondly, I've gotten a bunch of complaints about people being timed out or muted or whatever simply for expressing their opinion. Nobody should be muted here unless they absolutely are acting a fool. Everybody should be aware of how I feel about that. We have a free speech zone here and an open forum. Everyone is welcome, provided that you respect the other chat room users, etc. Now, several people have come here and been, nasty and hurled personal insults at me. I don't care about that. People are free to, call me whatever you want. It doesn't bother me. Let them be muted. Don't, I think that some of the moderators, in an effort to, protect me or the show, are like, hey man, you can't come here and be nasty or just hurl insults at our show host. Let them. It's all engagement, and it all helps. It all helps. Now, certainly, if somebody's hurling racial slurs or being, really nasty to fellow users, sure, do what is appropriate. But we want to go out of our way to not mute, silence, censor anybody unless it's absolutely necessary. So I've gotten that off my chest. We want to take a moment to recognize and welcome in the live chat. Also have to remind you that we are now streaming live on Instagram, our entire show every day that we do a show. You can follow me on Instagram. It's at Truthseeker Show, one Truthseeker, the word show, all one word, Truthseeker Show, at Truthseeker Show on Instagram. Be sure to follow me on Twitter as well. It's at Stephen Cambion. I appreciate all the recent follows. I've had an Instagram account forever, never used it, but now, since Instagram is allowing us to become, Instagram is becoming another distribution partner for our show, happy to use that account. I'll be posting some imagery and things like that related to the show. That's what we'll be using that account for, as well as live streaming our show. There seems to be some kind of an issue where it's kind of behind, or maybe that's just me monitoring it. I'm not sure. It seems to be a few minutes behind. Sometimes I'm aware of the issue. I think Instagram is still working on their live streaming features, so just bear with us as we get through the technical problems. So I'm going to share my screen. I have added this Richard Cole Jr.'s blog post about this. And this, as you can see, it's from quite some time ago, but it's taken me some time. I wanted to do additional checking. And just to be clear, I have some Air Force sources and contacts who I reached out to and said, here's the results from the National Personnel Record Center. Could you be of any help or assistance? Because I want to be absolutely certain that this person was not in the Air Force. And several sources came back. I can't find any records for him, Stephen. You should trust that if the National Personnel Record Center cannot find his records, they likely don't exist. So this is Charles Hall. Remember, his entire story was sold on him being credible because he was an Air Force officer. And like many of the stories in UFO land, I believe that Mr. Hall used the perceived credibility of a military man to help bolster the credibility of his story. Unfortunately, it would appear that Charles Hall was never in the Air Force. So we're going to go through this. It's going to be a little dry here tonight. So get yourself a beverage and just strap yourself in, because this is a long. Richard, listen, there's a reason that I unleashed Richard Cole on this story, because I wanted to be sure. And Richard Cole is one of the most thorough researchers that I know. And also, it's not my intention to falsely accuse anybody of crimes or being a stolen valor fraud. These are serious issues. So, to be very honest with you, I was so shocked at even the possibility that Mr. Hall has been lying all these years about his military service that I didn't feel comfortable just researching it myself. I want to be absolutely certain of these things. So I unleashed a literal expert in military records on him, a man who's a former Marine himself, proud service member. And by the way, I want to thank him for his service and for also helping with this situation. So Mr. Cole writes, I was recently contacted by a colleague who asked if I could investigate the military service claims of Charles James Hall. Hall is well known in the UFO conspiracy community as having written a series of books detailing his experiences with, quote, tall white aliens at Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada, from 1964 to 1967. And here's a quote from Mr. Hall. I enlisted in the United States Air Force in July 1964 after completing basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. I was transferred as a United States Air Force weather observer at United States Air Force Weather Training School at Chanute Air Force Base, Illinois. My duties were of that of United States Air Force weather observer during my entire service in the United States Air Force. Hall does not name the weather squadron he was assigned. In late March or early April of 1963, he says, I was assigned to the weather squadron stationed at Nellis Air Force Base at Las Vegas, Nevada. I was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base from the early spring of 1965 until May 1967. Hall claims temporary assigned duty to range sites at Indian Springs, Nevada. He says, while I was permanently stationed at Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada, I was assigned to several temporary tours of duty as the weather duty observer in the Nellis Gunnery Ranges that are located at Indian Springs, Nevada. In an undated, unattributed ViewZone.com article titled Disclosure This, Part 3, Tall White Aliens in Vegas, the Charles Hall Experience, the writer describes Hall and his story as follows. This is certainly the most underreported story you have never heard of, and this is part 3 of this series will change that. All the people, there are not many, who have researched this case and interviewed Charles Hall come away with an extremely positive impression as to his sincerity, veracity, and general togetherness. He is a likable person and a gentleman, old school, a soft-spoken family man, and a nuclear physicist. There is not one hint of Charles Hall being a cleverly disguised genius writer hoaxer who just happened to have the knack to become a millionaire with his story. Simply because every alien movie that this author is aware of pales against the tall whites in Vegas, originally written as a fictional account with changed names and locations to protect himself and those who had served with him in the Air Force. Charles Hall later made clear that his series of 4 books, Millennial Hospitality, is as close to a documentary as possible. Mr. Cole goes on to say a documentary was eventually produced and directed by Emil Marzak in 2020 for Amazon Prime titled Walking with the Tall Whites. And here I'm gonna get that on my screen so that I can share that with you. 1 second here. We'll share this tab instead.
And it actually got to be a pretty heated argument. And finally, I said, Charles, you're unemployed. If the men in black come to the front door, you go with them. It's free room and board. And then he laughed and he said, you're right. What do we have to lose? You changed the name of your friends in the book to protect their privacy. Have you changed the tall white names as well?
No, because I figure that any tall white that wants to sue me would have to appear in court. I win either way. Okay, I win either way. Guilty as charged. Can we have
pretty
pictures?
interesting. And from the documentary, this is a story based on the book series Millennial Hospitality by Charles James Hall, who claims that he was living with extraterrestrials for 2 years. Charles was scared to death during his first encounters with the tall whites, as he called them. But after some months, he overcame his worst fears and started to communicate with the extraterrestrials and slowly getting to know them. And you too can buy this movie for $7. I don't recommend it, however, given recent revelations about the seed of the story. Remember, the entire beginning of the story, and the reason people believe it's Mr. Charles Hall is because he was a military man, which added credibility to the story. Now we can't verify that he was ever in the Air Force. And in fact, all evidence and indications seems to point to the fact that Mr. Hall was not honest. I also want to share this tab as well. Boy, this looks like GeoCities. This is his website where you too can buy his books. He's got several books in multiple languages: Walking with the Tall Whites, Millennial Hospitality. You can even buy them in audiobook form. So interestingly, Mr. Hall has been collecting money while telling his story, claiming that he had, Air Force experience. And there are documents that he provides that seem to indicate he was in the Air Force. He claims this is an Air Force boot camp photo. Now, one of the strangest things is I can't explain how he has pictures of himself in what appear to be period correct Air Force uniforms, though some people have suggested that he was in ROTC for the Air Force in high school. I don't know if that's the case. In the first 12 minutes of the documentary, says Mr. Cole, Hall details his service in Vietnam beginning in 1967. The documentary includes several photographs taken of Hall in Vietnam. The first 3 photographs show Hall in combat utility uniform wearing the rank of Senior Airman Sergeant. He is armed with CAR-15 rifle. Where all United States Air Force weather observers issued a CAR-15? No. And 2 pouches for 6 20-round magazines. This is where the story doesn't make sense. He appears to be in Vietnam, but then there's other problems. Like off in the distance of this photo, there are telephone poles, power lines. Those were not in any Vietnam, Air Force or Army camp. They didn't have power lines. So there's some definite problems with these images that appear to shed some doubt on their authenticity. Mr. Cole goes on to state the images in the documentary also appear to show permanent buildings with power lines and poles extending for hundreds of yards, as well as outdoor lighting, as exampled in the image below. What is the sign on the bottom right of the photo? Hall appears to be shaving with a knife or bayonet. And then he goes on to say, what's wrong with this picture? And again, he's claiming he was in the Air Force. That is a weapon that was never issued to Air Force people during the Vietnam era. So what's going on here? And why is he posing under power lines and there is, street lights? And he's saying that these are pictures taken of him during his service in Vietnam. It would appear that these are not what he pretended them to be. Here's some additional photographs of him, images posted by Charles Hall in a July 3rd, 2023 video. Hall has a secret photon theory and is trying to sell books. And here I'm going to share that post with you. By the way, this is a video about his photon theory, and Mr. Hall is trying to sell a book based on this theory, which is interesting. NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory captured this view of the massive Perseus cluster. Not quite sure.
Hello, I am Charles James Hall. I have authored 7 books, including Hall Photon Theory. My recent scientific book is entitled Beyond Relativity. It was published on August 11th, 2020. I am listing all of my books in this video. I felt gratified to see a number of recent NASA findings which appear to support my Hall photon theory.
So, Mr. Hall, and by the way, we didn't get far enough to investigate his educational claims. He claims to be a physicist, which is interesting. Let me go back to the other tab here. So he's trying to sell the books. Now, the first researcher that turned me on, I should say, turned me on. That sounded dirty. The first researcher that alerted me that there could be some problems with Mr. Charles Hall's story was a researcher named David Hilton. And Mr. Cole cites him in his research as well. He says, researcher David Hilton submitted a National Archives Standard Form 180 to the National Personnel Record Center, NPRC, in St. Louis, Missouri, in August of 2015. And there's videos here that we cite in this piece, Mr. Hall cites. Hilton received a response from the NPRC in November 2015, which stated no record of Charles James Hall's military service was located. From the 2020 documentary, says Mr. Cole, I was given the choice of re-enlisting and becoming an officer and being the duty weather observer for my entire career out in the ranges, or if I elected to go to Vietnam, they would send me to Cameron Bay, which was the nicest places to get sent to because you weren't really under fire or anything. When I got back, I would only have 2.5 months left of my enlistment, so I would be discharged and I could go home. And since I was quite homesick at the time, I decided to take Vietnam, and I was expecting to get sent to Cameron Bay and have an easy rest tour after all that stuff I had been in and out of the ranges. So he claims he was sent to Vietnam, but the pictures that he claims are from Vietnam, there's some real problems with here. It doesn't appear that those are real pictures from him actually being stationed somewhere in Vietnam. Hall claimed that when he arrived to report to headquarters, his orders in Vietnam near Saigon in South Vietnamese Air Base Binh Thu near Mekong River had been attacked with American casualties. Hall said that a sergeant processing him tore up his orders to Cameron Bay and typed new orders to report to the air base at Binh Thu, or is it Thai? Thui, Thu. Hall's blog for Goodreads states Charles received an award for surviving more than 35 communist attacks. This is where it gets deep. So remember, the Personnel Record Center has no record of his service, and here he is claiming he's getting Air Force accommodations. These are Hall's awards as shown in his 2020 Amazon Prime documentary, and the awards that he claims he has. And by the way, there's lists of these: Air Force Commendation Medal, Air Force Good Conduct Medal, National Defense Service Medal, Vietnam Service Medal with a Bronze Star, the Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross with Palm, United States Air Force Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal. Mr. Cole adds a citation. Citation reads, Sergeant Charles Hall for meritorious service, 11th May 1967 to March 1968. He claims that he reached a highest rank of Sergeant E5. Then there's a note on the end of his active service. He says, on May 7th, 1967, I was transferred from BFA Nellis to BFA Brish Thu in South Vietnam. I stayed in Vietnam from May 7th, 1967 to May 8th, 1968. After completing my duty trip to Vietnam, I returned to the U.S. and I was honorably discharged from the United States Air Force on May 8th, 1968 at BFA Travis, California. So one of the reasons that this whole story about him faking military service is interesting, and I believe that Mr. Cole and the previous researchers and myself are getting this story right, is because Mr. Hall gives very specific information in his books. This is when I enlisted. This is the date that I enlisted into the Air Force. This is the date I was discharged from the Air Force. This is the date I was at boot camp for my, early Air Force enlistment. This is the date that I was sent to Air Force weather observer training at this base, and I took this class this year. Well, that's very specific information, and dig as we might, it appears that Charles Hall wasn't at that boot camp. He wasn't a member of the boot camp, he claimed. He wasn't a member of the weather observer training class that he claimed to be in. So this is bizarre. This is bizarre. And then the pictures appear to be problematic, and not only do they not confirm his military service, but they seem to cast an incredible amount of doubt on his military service. And these are the amateur mistakes that I think somebody that wants to do a stolen valor sort of scam miss. But remember, especially when you're dealing with somebody like Richard Cole, he's sort of a military historian and an expert on records. And, I believe he's a Vietnam vet himself, so he doesn't really enjoy people lying and pretending that they were, a service member during Vietnam and showing false pictures that can't be from him being in Vietnam. There's a lot of problems with those images. Previous investigation, Richard Cole notes, on August 8th, 2005, article by Michael Sala states that the researcher and airline pilot David Coote was able to contact Charles Hall through a woman named Paula Harris. These people are all UFO wackadoos. Harris then facilitated contact with 3 witnesses. The article details the testimony of witness A, B, and C. Each claimed were stationed in the United States Air Force in the same area of Indian Springs, Nevada, about the same time period as Hall during the 1960s. The only other person to investigate Hall, to my knowledge, was the aforementioned David Hilton. And here he shows a picture of that Bin Thu Air Base in 1967. Notice there's no power lines. There's no street lights. So where is Mr. Hall taking pictures at that air base, which we can verifiably through history prove doesn't have street lights, doesn't have power lines, but somehow he's in pictures with streetlights and power. This is amazing. So Mr. Cole goes on to say, I have cross-referenced the dates provided by Hall, including the citation of his Air Force Commendation Medal, with the history of Bin Thu Air Base in 1967 and 1968. On the 20th of February 1966, a VC mortar attack on the base was stopped by fire from one of the base's AC-47s as another mortar attack on the 8th of July. On the 14th of October, following the activation of 14th Air Command Squadron at Nha Trang Air Base, the AC-47s of E-Flight 4th Air Commando Squadron were replaced by 5 AC-47s out of D-Flight. During the Tet Offensive in January 1968, the Viet Cong forces attacked the base with mortar and rocket fire, and on the 13th of February launched a ground attack on the base, which was repulsed by United States Air Force security police for no U.S. Or South Vietnamese losses. So remember, Mr. Hall said that while he was stationed at this base, there was attacks with casualties. But it would appear that that is not the case. There was attacks, but there were no casualties. Again, a major inconsistency in Mr. Hall's story, which casts further doubt on the accuracy of his problem. Sam Pyle, in a short article written in 2000, Sam Pyle, member of the United States Air Force Police Squadron stationed at Bin Thu Air Base from May 1967 to May 1968, described his experiences during the early Tet mortar attack on February 4th, 1968. The important part is he's wrong. Historically, he is wrong in the information that he is claiming happened while he was stationed at this base. Now on to the issue of aliases. In his first book, Charles Hall claims he reported to Bin Thu as Airman Second Class Charles Baker. As I stood watching the Air Force Master Sergeant in his early 30s go out from a dark blue United States Air Force van parked nearby, he greeted me as he approached. I'm Master Sergeant Walters. You're Airman Charles Baker, aren't you? Yes, I responded. I'm Airman Second Class Charles Baker, reporting for duty. Place your duffel bag in the van and we'll get you started, he responded. We have a mighty long drive down to the southwest to get to the Desert Center Air Base. It's several hundred miles. We'll have to make good time if we intend to arrive before the chow hall closes. Hall, Charles James, Millennial Hospitality. So he's using different names. And by the way, he's not just using different names in these books, he's using different birth dates. And I believe that he has not been honest about his birth date because that would make it easier to bust his false claims of Air Force service. Questions and concerns from Mr. Cole, who researched this man's claims very thoroughly. Why were there no records around for Hall at MPRC? The technician would verify that there is enough information required to process the request. If any of the required information is incorrect or missing, the request cannot be processed. These include full name, date and place of birth, service branch, and dates of service. Since Hall's records fall into the archive record category and is not digitized, the archives technician would have to physically retrieve his entire record officially. I don't know exactly what happened, but the request sent by David Hilton appeared to have all the required information. But was the information Hilton submitted, provided by Hall, correct? Was his record destroyed by the fire? I don't believe that. Why would Hall refuse to provide researchers with a redacted copy of his DD-214 as proof of service? Researcher and YouTube creator Stephen Cambion states in this video that he had contacted Charles Hall on multiple occasions requesting Hall provide a redacted form of proof of his military service claims. And I indeed did that. I said, hey, send me your DD-214. You can black out whatever you want, but that would, verify your military service. Mr. Cole goes on to say, Cambion reported that after confronting Hall that no record was found by David Hilton, who had previously found no record from the National Personnel Record Center of Hall's military service history, Charles Hall told Cambion that the records were top secret and you don't have a need to know. That's exactly what he told me. He told me, well, my records are top secret. Well, no, that's not how it works. You may have done top secret things during your military service, but the military is still required by law to verify your military service dates and etc. They did not do that. Why would Hall provide false date of birth or other false information required by NPRC to process a FOIA request for his releasable service details? Mr. Cole goes on to state, because he is hiding something. Hall has produced photos supposedly taken of himself in Vietnam, as well as certificates and awards, but I believe he may be hiding his actual military MOS or duty assignments prior to or serving in Vietnam. If it were proven he was not a United States Air Force weather observer stationed at Nellis Air Force Base, then his tall whites alien story is a total lie. And Michael Salla, who promoted Witnesses A, B, and C by David Coote and others, including Hall's wife and Paula Harris, are all complicit in the lie. And isn't it interesting that people like Michael Salla and Linda Moulton Howe, they love to say, well, I verified his service with these specific individuals. Great. Can we get their names? Oh, no, they're anonymous sources. This game is ridiculous. Mr. Charles Hall will have the benefit of the doubt until the facts are obtained. Wait, what's this? February 19th. And so here, Richard Cole catches the fact that on Facebook, Mr. Charles Hall's date of birth is completely different than the date of birth that he gives in his books. Why would you give one date of birth in your books and a completely different date of birth is on your Facebook? And all these people are wishing him happy birthday on this date. So Richard Cole did what any good researcher would do. He says, I submitted a request for Charles Hall's records to the NPRC. Again, in the same details Hall submitted by David Hilton in 2015. I received the following notification and official response letter. Thank you for contacting the National Personnel Record Center. Your request has been completed. The veteran's last name is Hall. You can download the documents. We recommend using the latest version of Google. But what you get is you get a letter which says, we have not found any Air Force records related to this individual. Thank you for contacting the National Personnel Record Center. We have been unsuccessful in identifying the military service from the above named individual. So, you know, this is a problem. This is a real problem for Charles Hall. And again, let me fix that. Sorry. Again, the burden of proof is on the person making the claims. I'm not the person that is claiming to have this prestigious military career. Mr. Hall is the person claiming that. So, you know, that's going to be a real problem for him. Oh, 1 second here. I seem to have lost the page. Just give me one moment here. Oh, these things work great. 1 second. Charles Hall. Oh, I have to go get that. 1 second. I have to get the damn link again. Just bear with me. Good thing I put it in the description of the video. I don't know why I'm having weird problems tonight. It must be the Men in Black, right? They don't want me exposing the Charles Hall stolen valor, you know, fraud. All right, I got it now. All right. Why can't I find it? Damn it. Oh, wait a minute. I can find it. Here we go. I have the link. All right, I got it back. Let me share my screen and we'll try to wrap things up. We're going to try to make this one a quick one because I'm going to do a part 2 with more and additional supportive evidence that would seem to indicate that Mr. Charles Hall is not somebody you can trust to tell you the truth. 1 second. Okay, so the second request with an additional birthday came back, no records again. Using updated information on Hall's date of birth, place of enlistment, and place of discharge. Hall's awards, decorations, duty assignments, and education were specifically requested. That request was received, but not yet processed, and then he gives an update. So the request was processed. Richard Cole's conclusion, remember, this is a military expert with an emphasis on military records, being an expert on military records. His conclusion, it is my belief that Charles James Hall created an elaborate hoax resulting in documentary film featuring his fictional claims of military service to establish credibility for his bizarre experience with aliens for fame and monetary gain. And he lists his sources here. So what we have here is 3 different researchers exhaustively searching for Charles Hall's records. Charles Hall has refused to provide his records, instead claiming that his records are top secret. And I'm sorry, not sorry. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. So I'm going back to YouTube or to Facebook, and I don't know. Can I share this? I guess I can share this. 1 second. I am going to share this. You are free to join now. So I sent Mr. Hall a message asking for comment, and he said, no, well, that's weird. I'm sure that he said some things earlier. Now it would appear. Well, anyway, I have sent him an invitation because I think that's the fair thing to do. He can join the stream and explain to us why the pictures are wrong, explain to us why he doesn't appear to be in the graduating class photos for the weather observer training class he claims to have taken that year at that base. He can explain to us why he's not listed in any of the basic training courses that he claimed to be a part of. He can explain why the National Personnel Record Center can't find any record of him having Air Force service. Here's where I believe the story is most interesting. And that is the fact that these stories take on a mythology of their own. Now, Charles Hall originated these stories probably 20 years ago. It was the first time that I heard him telling these stories. And I got to tell you, at the time he first came out with them, I listened to tons of his talks and lectures, and I wasn't really convinced, but, I kind of went, well, it's an interesting story, and this is an Air Force veteran. Me, like many people, I did assign more credibility to this man based on his military service. But now it would appear quite clear, and again, the burden of proof is on Mr. Hall. I'm not the one selling books claiming I was in the Air Force. I'm not the one taking money for UFO conference and speaking fees claiming that I was in the Air Force. I'm not the one getting documentary deals claiming I was in the Air Force. So the burden of proof is on him. And, we've talked about this law of the universe, which essentially states that in order for the amount of energy required to dispel bullshit is orders of magnitude more than it is to create it. So you see the incredible effort. Remember, that other researcher did all these records requests. And when you do the record request, you got to wait 6 to 8 months to get an answer. So the other researcher did a records request. I did a records request. Mr. Richard Cole, our military expert, he did 2 separate requests. All of them came back, no records for Mr. Charles Hall. And what's the deal with his birthday? Why would you have one birthday in your books and a different birthday on your Facebook? And that was a great catch by Mr. Cole. And I got to tell you that waiting to get the response with the second birthday, I was really kind of worried, because I thought, what if it's as simple as he put the wrong date, for his birthday in the books? And when we do the request this time, we're going to get the records confirming his service. Then where do I go with the story? And another thing worthy of note is that all Mr. Hall has is his story, but not just a story. He has a series of stories. And after the success of the first book, suddenly he remembered more that he could share about the tall white aliens, including their religion, their culture, their science, and on and on and on. One of the hallmarks, I think, of a fake story is that as time goes on, the story expands. It becomes more grandiose, more fantastic, and that is what we see exactly happen here. The first version of the story was very measured. Hey, I was a weather observer. I went to this base, and I don't know why or how, but this base was being used in a cooperative effort between our military and these aliens. They would use this base for things that you would expect, things they need, things like refueling and repairing their ships and things like that, resupplying their ships as they traverse through our star system onto other star systems. They use this base as sort of a repair station, like you would, I suppose, and I remember him describing it this way, like you would use a rest stop on a turnpike. You have to stop, fuel up, get food, whatever you need to do. So that was the first version of the story, and it was pretty, I would have to say, at the beginning, the story was much more grounded and seemingly believable. But as time went on and those more books came out, by the way, I have all of them. They're on my bookshelf downstairs. So, I am the victim of a stolen valor fraud, and I want my fucking money back. And by the way, I want my money back. And if he refuses to give it to me, I think I'm going to sue him in small claims court. We're going to take all of our research and show the judge that this man is selling books, claiming he was in the Air Force. And by the way, I'm a victim here. I bought the books. I also bought the documentary. So we're going to add up everything I spent, and maybe we'll do that. He's in a whole nother state than me. I got to find out if they'll allow me to appear virtually in small claims court. And by the way, I've had this idea several times to do something like that. And I think it's a good idea, because what if we could get him before a judge, let him explain to the judge why we can't find his military records, let him bring his military records and show the judge. But we've got a military expert in military records that essentially says this man is a stolen valor fraud. So interesting story. And what I wanted to really talk about in closing on this, and by the way, this is just part one. We're going to do part two, exposing more evidence. I have added the evidence we've shared tonight into the description of the video. Anybody can follow along. You're free to use that for your own content creative purposes, whatever you want. Just give us a thank you, or more precisely, give Richard Cole for tonight's information a thank you. So one of the reasons that this story is interesting to me is because Michael Salla keeps selling stories about tall white aliens. Linda Moulton Howe keeps telling stories about tall white aliens. Paula Harris sold stories about tall white aliens. David Wilcock sells stories about tall white aliens, or at least talks about it in his monetized, broadcast. Corey Good has more or less talked about tall white aliens, but he changed it sort of to the Anshar. Also, somebody asked me if Richard Hall just ripped off the tall white aliens from the Nordic type aliens. And I believe he did, but his are slightly different. They're much paler, much taller. Some of them can pass for humans, but some of them are way too tall and they can't pass for humans. It's a whole complicated story. You can buy the book, but not from me. So I do believe that the tall white aliens are just a takeoff or a modification. And all too often we see this in UFO land, where somebody will take an existing story, they change it around a little bit, and then they claim it as their own story. We could easily replace the words tall white alien with Nordic alien, and this would easily be just like an early 50s contactee story. Also important to note that besides his military claims of credentials and awards, Mr. Hall has no evidence of his story, one bit. Not a picture, not a video, not a DNA sample from one of the aliens. I don't know. If I was hanging out with aliens for 3 years, I might say, hey, can I have like some skin or like a cutting of your hair so that I can, have proof and evidence of my alien contact? I'd at least ask. I don't know. Maybe he was too shy. But it's interesting that Charles Hall has absolutely no evidence other than his story or stories. Like I said, after the first book, second book, third book, fourth book, then a documentary film deal. It seemed like every time he needed money, he suddenly had new stories about tall white aliens. But what is important for us to note here is that the very seed of the tall white alien myth is tainted by one big, huge lie. After all, Charles Hall's entire story of these aliens begins with, when I was in the Air Force. So the very first sentence he says when he's telling his stories at UFO conventions and conferences and in documentaries and in the books, the very first sentence he says is a complete, or appears to be, a complete and total fabrication and a lie. So, the conclusion that I come to is, if the very beginning, the very first sentence in the story is a complete and total lie, why should I listen to any other sentence or any other part of your story? Shouldn't he, as the claimant, he's the ones making these claims, shouldn't he provide evidence to refute what myself and several other researchers have found? I believe it's his responsibility to do so. Why would he refuse to appear here on my show? If, listen, and just to be also clear on another point, ever know anybody that really spent time in the military? They don't have a problem proving it. I've never met somebody that was really in the military that would obfuscate their birth date or try to muddy the waters so you couldn't get their records, or would say, hey, I'm sorry you couldn't find my records. Here's copies I have, you can research, or something. Nobody I've ever met that was really in the military said things like, oh, my records are top secret, that's why you can't get them. That sounds like something a con man would do that's got caught with his pants down selling fake alien stories based on his fake military service. And again, the burden of proof is on the person making the claims. I want to be clear in that. in this circumstance, I wanted to be 100% sure. So you can see that I went above and beyond to try to get to the truth behind Mr. Charles Hall and his claims of military service. I did the best that I could, and I have more information, but I wanted to just put this on the record first, and we'll see if there's interest. I'll do a part 2 and show you more evidence and proof that this man, we can go through the book line by line. And in the book, he gives very specific information, like I went to weather observer training class at this military base on this year. Well, we can go and check that, and no Charles Hall. So, and what's interesting to me is so many of these other conspiracy land characters, including Elena Dannon and Michael Salla, Corey Good, David Wilcock, Linda Moulton Howe, many, many others, all tell stories of tall white aliens, but they don't know that the whole story begins with one incredible, huge lie. They're acting like these people in conspiracy and UFO land, and you'll hear them. And by the way, after tonight, my wish for all of you, for everyone within the sound of my voice, or anybody who watches this replay or hears the audio podcast, my wish is that for the rest of your life, every time you hear some wackadoo talking about tall white aliens, you're going to remember, oh, Steve Cambion busted that. That guy was a fraud. He was a stolen valor fraud. He was never in the military. So that whole story is likely fake. The entire seed of the story begins with when I was in the Air Force. We have done our due diligence. I'm confident in saying it. Unless he can prove me wrong, this man was never in the United States Air Force. I don't care if he has pictures of himself with uniforms on. That doesn't prove that he was in the Air Force. You know what does? Seeing copies of his records. I welcome Mr. Hall to refute our findings here. But he's going to be facing an uphill battle because, again, Richard Cole is a military expert. He could be considered an expert on these matters in any court of law in the United States. So, if he's going to refute us, you better come with some evidence, or, and that's another thing. I'm not going to play this game of like, oh, you couldn't get my records because they're sealed. No, they're not. No, they're not. Or they're top secret, or you don't have a need to know. These are all the excuses of a con artist that we've caught. And I feel confident in both my own research and especially in Richard Cole's. There's a reason I brought him in here. I wanted to be absolutely certain before we started making claims about his military service. Now, and just to circle back around and wrap things up. So my wish is that every time, and you're going to hear people talking about tall white aliens, right? Every time you hear somebody talking about tall white aliens, you'll know the truth, that the entire seed of this entire story begins and ends with when I was in the Air Force. He can't prove he was in the Air Force. So therefore, and that plus the addition of the fact that he has absolutely no supportive evidence of his claims of aliens and seeing spaceships or any of that, he has no evidence whatsoever. So people can choose what they want to believe. I would love to believe that there is some intelligent, human-like, very human-like, interesting species from another planet that is visiting us. I would love to believe that. But when that story is brought to me by somebody who is lying about being an Air Force officer, who is lying about being an officer in Vietnam, who is lying about going to certain training classes he was never involved in. And by the way, we've checked. He wasn't involved in the training classes. He gives very specific dates and bases and everything. He may have tipped his hand too far and allowed enough information in those books that we could catch him. But isn't it interesting that the myth of the tall white aliens has been expanded upon, has grown? Now we've got how many people in UFO land? If you think about it, a lot of people in UFO land have done stories or sold stories talking about tall white aliens. And some of them recognize and attribute the first person to talk about tall white aliens was Charles Hall. But I've got a new witness talking about tall white aliens. Well, I guess if I really want to be fair, I guess you have to evaluate each of these stories based on their own merits. But when the originator of the story turns out to be a stolen valor fraud scumbag that pretended he was in the Air Force to sell a story, it really does call into question the credibility of everybody else telling similar stories after him. I think that it's interesting that we can, through this story, we can witness the creation of a myth. This is a myth. Oh, the tall white aliens. This is a myth created by a myth maker whose obvious financial motive is plain to see. He sold 4 books on this. He does UFO conventions telling these stories. He's got a documentary film deal on Amazon. It's just interesting to me. And like I said, my wish really is that people see this, and every time some clown in UFO land tries to sell you a story about the tall white aliens, you're going to know that the entire story begins and ends with one huge lie. All right, friends, so that should wrap up tonight's presentation. We got through in record time. I'm going to take some comments and questions from the live chat, so please put them in all capital letters. For those unaware, we read every single super chat and recognize and thank every single person who sends us, their support. We thank each and every one of you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. I'm going to check in with the PayPal, see if we have any PayPal pledges. No super chats yet tonight. No money, no honey, I guess. It's all good. We also want to take a moment. I've been invited to a space tonight, so it's good that we're on a short schedule tonight. All right. We want to thank Maria for a kind and generous $25 PayPal pledge, who says, I really enjoyed this story about Jeremy Corbell's history. Keep it up. Well, we thank you, Maria, longtime show supporter, for your kindness, generosity, and support. I appreciate you. Thanks for appreciating us. So any other support, we read every single one. We thank you, Patreon supporters, and all of that stuff. Yes, you're right. Steve Nicholson says, Stephen, didn't Hall state that at some point he took the aliens to Vegas to play casino games and cards? Yes, he did. Yes, that's in one of his books. The ones that were, apparently they aged backwards or something, and the younger they are, the taller they are. Maybe I'm getting this wrong. I think so. The younger they are, the taller they are. But as they get older, they get more to human size. And they could put on sunglasses, and even though they were pale-skinned, they can almost pass for a human. So he took them to Vegas to play casino games. Yes. Stevenson, Brad is here in our Facebook Live feed and says, I don't believe in the tall whites or Hall's account. But what about his military career is fake? Did he not serve? How did he steal valor? I sincerely don't know, and I'm just catching this now. Well, listen, it's understandable, but, I just did an hour-long presentation answering your question, and now you're asking the question. And I mean this with all kindness and sincerity, but I've answered your questions in the presentation that we've just completed. It takes about an hour to go through and show you what about his military career is fake and that he did not serve. We provided all the evidence and proof. And by the way, in the description of the video you're watching is the cited source materials that we've used to make this determination by noted military expert Richard Cole. All right. Lunar Sparkles is here. Always enjoy when Lunar Sparkles shows up and saying, doing stuff around the house, feeding raccoons. It's going to rain soon. Typical evening. Sounds like it. High Speed Chase is here and says, appreciate your work, Stephen. Rock and roll. Well, thank you for being a member and appreciating us, right? Charles Bam says, prove there are no tall whites. Well, this is, again, a case of falsifiability. There's a concept of falsifiability, which basically means if I can't prove that the story is fake, but you can't prove that the story is true, it doesn't pass the test of falsifiability and therefore has no value. And yes, to be clear, I can't prove that the rest of his story is fake. There's certainly some great indications that parts of his story are fake. But yeah, I'll concede that. I can't prove that there are no tall whites, but you can't prove there are. So we're it leaves us at an impasse, right? Oh, Lunar Sparkle says, last night the electricity was out for 12 hours. Now I'm behind. Yeah. Mr. Ian says, thank you for being a great audience consistently. It gives us some kind of hope that we're, when we're thinking of show ideas. Yeah. Mr. Ian has appointed himself my producer or something now. He's coming up with the shows. I'm catching up with the live chat here. The tall white thing creeps me out. I've had a few odd experience with tall, very tall, almost non-human people, and each time it was incredibly weird. Were you on a 10x dose of a certain, chemical when that was going on? Wow, Capone just Chestavius says, does Marina Saren bend you over at night? No, I'm a married man, and I wouldn't let that skag anywhere near me or my family. Just so you know. You ever know somebody? I call it ugly on the inside. Like I like this Marina Saren kind of thing. Like she was so. Some guys were simping for her so hard and thought she was so gorgeous and beautiful. And guys would tell me that, like, yeah, she's kind of crazy with the Nazi stuff, but she's so hot. Not to me. That girl is ugly on the inside to believe in that kind of nastiness, right? And the good Nazis. Boy, it's been a while since I even thought about her, and I prefer it that way. Night Watch N8 says, bro, I was in the Space Force before it was called the Space Force. Were you in the Secret Space Force, right? Daisy B is here. By the way, Daisy B, did you get your lights? Daisy B and I are going to do a show on consumer fraud and multi-level marketing. And I know a little bit about that, so I thought it would be a fun conversation, Daisy B. But Daisy B is concerned with, making sure that she has adequate and great lighting. So she's waiting. Listen to this. Daisy B, only the people in the United States are going to laugh at this, Daisy B. Daisy B told me she's got to wait until she gets her streaming lights from Kmart. And I went, Kmart? Where the hell do you live, girl? And apparently you're in Australia, right, Daisy B? And there's still Kmarts everywhere. There's no Kmarts left in the United States, so that's a weird thing, right? Anthony Peter says, people may be having these high strangeness experiences, but when you look at their records, it gets fishy and then they lose credibility. Yeah, I totally agree with that, right? Chuck Bam says, that is personal testimony, evidence of the tall whites. Well, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish here, Chuck, but okay, so that is evidence, his testimony. But it was also his testimony that he was in the Air Force. So I guess you have to admit that parts of his testimony are completely and totally fake. So what value does fake testimony have? Not much, if you ask me. Yeah, Daisy B told me how much she loves Kmart, and I regaled her with wonderful stories of my childhood. For those unaware, I don't know how long they had it, or they certainly didn't still have it towards the end of their run before they went out of business. But when I was a child, Kmart's had cafeterias. And I don't know anybody except for my father who would get excited about eating at a Kmart cafeteria. But my dad was a big guy. He was like 350 and some change. I mean, he was big guy. And one of his favorite things in the universe, to this day, I don't know really, I don't understand it, but it was Kmart had an all-you-can-eat fried chicken dinner. And you could go there and pay, I swear it was like $6 when I was a kid, or maybe even less, or maybe like $3.99. I don't know. It was a long time ago. So my father would take me and my brother, and he would even tell us, like, look, man, don't have lunch. Don't eat any lunch today. We're like, why? He's like, because we're going to Kmart and we're going to eat the chicken. And me and my brother like, oh, right. I mean, it was pretty decent fried chicken for coming from Kmart cafeteria. But anyway, we went in there, and my dad was such a big guy, they would run out of chicken. He would eat them out of chicken. It was all, and then it would take him like, we'd be there for hours. I used to bring a book with me. That's how big my dad was and how much he loved all you can eat fried chicken. And to this day, every time I see or eat fried chicken, I think about my father. May he rest in peace. I hope there's a Kmart cafeteria in heaven, Daisy B. Yeah. Daisy B says, I'd be in heaven shopping in the USA, even in grocery stores. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I once had an experience with a Polish immigrant, and this was during the height of the Cold War. And they came here, and I took them to the supermarket, and they lost it. They were just like, I can't believe you guys have all of this food anytime you want it. That's amazing. So be thankful for what you have if you're in the United States, because some people are not so lucky. 16th Doc with a kind and generous $5. No message. Well, we'll take it anyway. We thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. And thank you for helping us praise the cash, bitches.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
We love it. Thank you for the kindness and support. Anybody else have any super chats? Get them in now. We're going to wrap things up. We're going to call this a quick one. First Last says, our Kmart didn't have a cafeteria, but it had a middle island where they sold stinky popcorn and ices, cherry and blue. Yeah, I remember those too. I always got the cherry. The ices, for those unaware, it's like a Slurpee. It's a frozen beverage. And they taste like cough syrup. Like, I don't know why kids like that. I didn't really like it as a child. My kids get Slurpees that I think taste similar, like this, just some medicine-y weirdness to it. I don't like it. Oh, the Blue Light specials. Yes. Operation Shutdown says, I hope there's a Kmart cafeteria in the sky. If my father had his way, he'd be eating dinner at the Kmart cafeteria in heaven every night. Without my meds, Daisy says, they don't do chicken salt on their chips, and chicken salt is basically legal crack. It's so good. I don't know about that. We thank Patrick Sheehan, longtime show supporter, for kind and generous $4.99. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Longtime show supporter, Patrick Sheehan. We appreciate you. Thanks for appreciating us and helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
That's it. We're praising the cash up in here tonight. KFC buffet. That's basically what it was. As I recall, KFC was slightly better quality. If back then, if my dad said, do you want to get a KFC bucket of chicken or go to Kmart for the all-you-can-eat chicken, I probably would have preferred the KFC. KFC was a little better breading and, but it was decent chicken, and we used to eat like pigs there. Like, me and my brother would just eat so much that we want to collapse, and my dad would still be going at it. He would get coffee and like digest for a while, and then he'd get a couple more plates of chicken. We'd be there for hours. The worst, I swear my brother and me still say this, the worst place to take my father was an all-you-can-eat buffet. Like, you weren't getting out of there. He would like eat, wait a little while, have coffee, digest, eat another round, have coffee, digest. I think my father felt like he had to beat them, and I still feel that myself. Like, when I go to a Chinese buffet, my wife is like, oh, these French fries are really good. I'm like, what are you eating French fries for? They're shrimp. I'm going to eat 7 pounds of shrimp while I'm here. I'm getting my money's worth, right? A&W dinner with their root beer on draft. I was never a fan of root beer, so we're birch beer. I hate chippers that don't put salt and vinegar. Blasphemy, says Bob Morley. Yeah, I've had French fries with salt and vinegar before. It's pretty good. Not a huge fan. I'm just a ketchup guy. Just give me good sea salt on those fries. Fry them in peanut oil, right? Al Garay says, got to get your money's worth at the buffet. Yeah, you feel like you got to beat them, right? Garagey, thanks for being a member, says, do not disparage the chicken salt. If you haven't had, then you haven't lived. I don't even know what chicken salt is. What is chicken salt? I don't know what chicken salt is. That's interesting. It's Australia's secret umami bomb. The chicken salt is made from real chicken, and it's the powerful umami bomb your vegetables, popcorn, and French fries need. I never even heard of that. I'm going to have to try that. Thank you. I like trying new things from other cultures, right? It's interesting. Yes, I do. My wife makes fun of me. She calls it garbage. She's like, here, I got you some garbage, Hungry Man. Trolley Troll, thanks for being a member, says, didn't you say that you loved Hungry Man chicken TV dinners? Yes, and I usually eat 2 of them for dinner because they're kind of gotten smaller, you know? One of them feels like a snack to me, not a full dinner. But if you eat 2 of them, it's enough. And every once in a while, when my wife's going to be away or something, and she's worried about me eating, she gets me a bunch of them, stick them in the freezer, right? They're delicious. I also like, what is it called? Something Farms. There's a gas station near me that always has fried chicken. And I get the fried chicken there because it's probably like half the price of KFC. I haven't had KFC in a long time. Everybody's trying to save a couple bucks. Let's get the cheaper chicken at the gas station, right? Royal Farms. It's called Royal Farms in my area. And every Royal Farms has fried chicken ready to go almost. You get there and you order it and they have some kind of special. You could get like 8 pieces of dark meat for $9 or something like that, or $12 for mixed. I get that once in a while when I don't feel like cooking, and we make like mac and cheese for the boys and just feed them that, you know. More chemicals in the chicken salt than salt. Oh, Lordy. I went to Australia and got Siggy butt brain. Okay. James Pepper says, grocery store fried chicken is much better than the chicken places. Cheaper, too. Yeah, I've gotten that. And, you know, me and my wife, we often get a whole rotisserie chicken. And then the same thing. We just buy the chicken at the supermarket. We come home and make like some, you know, rice-a-roni, chicken rice or something with it and a vegetable. It's a quick, easy meal. I repainted the inside of Captain Moonlight and Roses on Vulture Street in Brisbane. I airbrushed a galaxy into the ceiling over deep purple gloss. Okay, that's pretty random. Gas station sushi. I don't like sushi, so I'm pretty sure I've heard bad things about gas station sushi, right? Vegemite is gross tasting to me. Yeah, I had that once, so I can't say that I was a fan of Vegemite. Not at all. You know, like some things you try just to try them. I tried it just to try them because I heard about Vegemite so much. Wasn't really a fan. Well, I haven't run these bumpers in a while, so we're going to take a quick break. But I always have to. Let's do that first. Andrea with a kind and generous $20 super chat. Thank you for kindness, generosity, and support. Says, thanks for all you do. Well, thank you for appreciating us. That's quite kind of you. You're the MVP of Super Chats tonight. We thank you for appreciating us. We certainly appreciate you. Here's one for Andrea and also all you YouTube channel members and all you Patreon supporters. Thank you all for supporting us and helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your generosity. Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Big show supporter. We love to see it. We love to see it. And, I apologize. Some of these stories take forever to put together. So I had this as a part 1, but I wanted to do more. And I've got more research materials on this story that we will likely be sharing at some point in the future. Somebody asked me if there's more shows this weekend. I'm really not sure. We're supposed to get a hell of a snowstorm, and that sometimes comes with power failures. So I'm really not sure what's happening for the rest of the weekend. I do know that since there was a snowstorm early in the week and there's likely to be another big snowstorm tonight, I won't be going to the cabin this weekend. So usually when I stay home from the cabin, I try to cram some extra shows in here. Pardon me. All right, so I haven't played these bumpers in a while, but every time I do this, we play the bumpers and people think the show's over. The show's not over. I'm just going to get those bumpers in, especially for the benefit of the audio podcast. For those unaware, you could follow us on Instagram now at Truthseekers Show. You can also visit our website, truthseekershow.com. One Truthseeker, the word show, all one word, truthseekershow.com. Get all the latest audio and video versions of the show. And we appreciate all you audio podcast listeners. So I have to put this up when we play these bumpers. People think, oh, that's the end. Not really. We're just going to play these bumpers for the benefit of those who wish to support us. I also want to make sure that we recognize and understand that all of our content is now and forever will be free, maybe ad supported, but free to consume. So throwing a couple bucks in our hat is entirely optional, but it does keep a couple bucks in the till here so that we can do things. And one of those things is going to be traveling soon. I've got some announcements to make soon. But in the meantime, here's Mr. Ian, the man with the golden voice, to let you know how you can support our show.
Truthseekers is a viewer-supported show. Wonderful people like you who enjoy this show send pledges in the form of super chats, super stickers, super thanks, PayPal, or Cash App. Instructions for how to help are in the description. You can also join our Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month you can get extra content. Patreon supporters get a backstage pass, early access to all our production videos before they are distributed publicly, Stephen Campion's music, private writings, a monthly show journal, and more. You can also become a YouTube channel member for $5 a month. A YouTube membership includes all of the Patreon benefits, plus a special members badge, priority reply to video comments, and the live chat, plus a monthly members-only video. We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors, for supporting Truth Seekers. Thank you for your generosity and support. Truthseekers is a viewer-supported show. Now there's a great way to support these broadcasts and show your support. Please be sure and check out our merchandise store. Links to our 2 merchandise online stores are in the links to this video or podcast. The Amazon storefront ships super quickly in the United States, Great Britain, and in many more places. Amazon may not ship to your country or location. If that's the case, hit our second merchandise link in the description and visit our Redbubble storefront. Merchandise from our Redbubble storefront ships worldwide, but may take longer than Amazon. We've got a great deal of super high quality merchandise for you to choose from, including t-shirts, phone cases, sweatshirts, and even pillows. The feedback from our products have been overwhelmingly great. Quality products and fast shipping. People all over the world are buying some merchandise and showing their support of the show. Praise the cash! Praise the cash! Praise the cash! We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors who are buying some merchandise and helping us to continue this journey. Thanks for being here. This is Truthseekers with your host, Stephen Campion. Please rate, like and comment on our videos or podcasts. If you are listening to an audio podcast, please rate us 5 stars to help us rise in the search rankings. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to an audio podcast, we love and appreciate you listeners, but you are missing the live tapings. All our shows are recorded live with video feed. We'd love you to come be a part of our live broadcasts and tapings for the podcast. Head on over to YouTube, click the search tool, the little magnifying glass, put Truthseekers, one word in the search bar, and hit enter. You'll see a strange and mysterious guy with sunglasses. That means you found the channel. Go there, smash the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to receive up-to-date info on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to be a part of our live taping and our chat room during the live broadcasts. Seek the truth. Speak the truth. This is Truthseekers. Truthseekers.
Okay, so we are back. We have done our due diligence. We want to take a moment to thank all of you for joining us. I did have a quick update on the Jellyfish UFO. Remember, Jeremy Corbell is making an awful lot of claims, trying to keep that fake story rolling for whatever reason. And one of his claims was that he has all of these military witnesses. Mr. Corbell claimed that he is in possession of the training manuals of that platform, which is absolutely ridiculous because that would be probably highly sensitive, maybe even classified material that, you know, civilians don't get to just read. But Corbell, after the brilliant debunk by Mick West, saying that essentially it's most likely balloons. It's going with the path of the wind in a straight line, in the same speed as the wind, etc. Mr. Corbell doesn't want to let go of his stupid jellyfish balloons. It's not balloons, he claims. It's some sort of extraordinary craft. But I don't believe that that is correct. And Mr. Corbell has claimed that it can't be balloons, and he has military witnesses that all say it can't be balloons. But here we have a military expert who claims otherwise. So I guess it's time for Jeremy Corbell to put up or shut up. He's claiming all these military experts have said, it can't be balloons. Well, it would appear that other people beg to differ.
On this jellyfish UFO or UAP thing, I've been using this same equipment. It looks like a Westcam infrared imager for about 5 or 6 years now. Got lots of hours on this equipment and looking at different objects through infrared. I'm afraid the most likely candidate, it's definitely a real object. It is definitely something outside whatever aircraft is recording it. It's not a smear on the lens or something like that. It wouldn't move. It would move with the target reticle if it was stuck on there. We do get bugs and things that stick on there, but they don't. When you move the lens, it moves with it because it's stuck to the lens. It's a real thing, but the fact that it doesn't accelerate or decelerate under its own power, it just kind of floats along like a balloon. This is probably a Mylar birthday balloon. I've probably seen 20 or 30 birthday balloons float up from parties, kids' parties and things like that. And this is exactly what they look like.
Yeah,
it
so
doesn't, even though it shows a heat signature on the imager,
also busts Jeremy Corbell's claims of the object changing temperature.
It doesn't actually have its own heat or cool. It's reflecting infrared light, which it reflects like it would light. And it would normally be invisible, but because we're looking at it through thermal or a FLIR imager, we're actually seeing the infrared reflecting like light would do, but we're able to see it because of it being on an imager that's able to see or capture that infrared. And so here's another shot of the lens. You can see this one's nice and clean, but if it weren't, then as it would move, trying to keep track of the image, you would see that stain or whatever move with it. But I'm afraid just based on the way that they move, and yeah, this dog clip is probably the best one. It just kind of floats down, and here's one in daylight where we can see it's reflective now of natural light of sunlight. It's probably a balloon.
So there you go. Military expert chiming in that Mr. Corbell is wrong and that it is indeed the Jellyfish UFO or UAP is indeed probably a balloon. And not about you, but I would prefer to trust the military expert rather than some clown like Jeremy Corbell, who's gotten caught selling fake stories how many times now that weren't what he originally claimed they were. You remember there was the flares that he called the giant triangle spaceship craft or whatever. There was many more. The Boca. Oh no, those are pyramid spaceships, not drones or anything ordinary. Yeah, exactly. Support the troops. Brett Clark with an excellent observation says, support the troops, except if they tell you what you don't want to hear about your jellyfish alien spaceship that isn't, right? Yeah, Smith says you don't need a military expert, right? Yes, Coast to Coast featured the Jellyfish UFO on their 1:15 daily email. I would post a link, but I guess that is against the rules. Yeah, you got to be a moderator. And honestly, I don't want to support anything that Coast to Coast is promoting. But thank you, Trolley Troll Troll, for letting us know about that. Right? Smith says, when you say Mylar, Roswell head starts streaming. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's just interesting. Corbell is a garbage peddler. He's never going to change. And he's literally making fun of people for doing real research, right? He's claiming that Mick West is wrong about this or wrong about that. He can't prove him wrong, but he's going to say it, right? Corbell just admitted on Steve-O's show that there is an active investigation, and there should be. You mean into people leaking him sensitive or possibly classified military videos, or investigation into what? Corbell's claiming that he has access to all kinds of classified military information, like training manuals for their threat identification devices, right? It's so ridiculous. There's no way that anybody would risk their life, their career, their freedom, and jail time to show Corbell the training manuals for these things. He's just coming up with anything he can to bluff that it's not balloons. First Last says, it's not David Wilcock's flying car technology demonstration. No. What did Steve-O's 8 remaining brain cells think of that? Yeah, nothing says credibility like talking UFOs with Steve-O, a man who made a career for himself by jamming things up his asshole, right? Randy says, you think Corbell could get prison time for his leaking of government videos? Well, I'm not a lawyer, but what I did do is some research, and it appears that most often when somebody is prosecuted for leaking classified information, the journalist doesn't get prosecuted. The person who leaked it to the journalist does. And people at various times have suggested that Jay Stratton gave Corbell this material, or Dave Grush. I don't know. I think it's up to Dave Grush and Jay Stratton to confirm or deny that they've leaked sensitive or classified military information to people like Corbell or anyone else. Until then, it's just rumors and speculation. But the timeline does seem to match up with them meeting Grush. Suddenly they're releasing military videos that he would have had access to, being a part of that UAPTF. He would have had access to that stuff likely. So, I guess someday I think we're going to find out who is leaking this stuff to them. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to turn out to be a good thing for the people that have been leaking this stuff to them. And, I'm all for government transparency and disclosure and all that stuff. But, this gets into some very difficult areas. Like, you could be endangering the lives of soldiers at those bases or whatever by leaking this information, Rise Above says, the radar expert Mick West had on said you could research the training manuals for earlier versions of radar. Corbell is a snake oil salesman, insinuating he has access to current training manuals. Yeah, that's pretty interesting and a good observation, Rise Above. Thanks for letting me know that. Everyone associated with OSAP should be investigated, to include Corbell and Knapp. Yeah, I mean, apparently there was some talk of investigation into the TTSA thing, which, newspaper reports have characterized as a techno scam. here's the thing. In the world of UFOs, things are very shady, and a lot of people don't want to recognize or understand that. And I get that, especially the people where it's just like casual fun. Oh, let's see what alien stuff is on the internet. They don't really understand how the UFO world is filled with all these shady, scummy characters that will do literally anything to sell their next, big UFO or alien story and get a big cash out over it, right? It's kind of ridiculous. Smith says, yeah, good point, Rise Above. All the footage released has to be declassified systems. Yeah. The whole reason they couldn't release other telemetry for Tic Tac was because it was all still on classified systems. That's interesting. Yeah. So listen, I think we have done our due diligence. I'm going to bounce on out of here. To be very honest with you, I always try to be honest with the audience here. I don't know when I'll be back. It might not be until Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. But a good thing to do is follow me on Twitter. It's at Stephen Cambion, where we announce all of our shows well in advance of their broadcast. So if you want to keep up to date with everything going on with the show, follow me on Twitter. It's at Stephen Cambion. Otherwise, follow me on Instagram now as well, at Truthseeker Show. One Truthseeker, the word show, but all one word, at Truthseeker Show on Instagram. And thank you guys for all the follows. I've never used that Instagram account, starting to use it now. In fact, I got a bunch of new photographs related to the show that I will be uploading shortly there. So follow me on Instagram at Truthseeker Show. Also visit our website, truthseekershow.com. You can follow me on Facebook, just Stephen Cambion, or follow us on the Truthseekers page on Facebook as well. We appreciate all the support of you guys sharing our links on your social media. It really does help. So, take tonight's show, copy the link and put it on your Facebook or your Instagram or your Twitter. It really does help. And we appreciate all of you. We want to thank everybody for their kindness, generosity, and support tonight. All you super chatters, Twitch subscribers, YouTube channel members, Patreon supporters, PayPal donators, super chatters, super stickers, and all you super thanks people. Did you know that? Even if you're watching a replay, you can still throw a couple bucks in our hat, and we appreciate that support. Just hit that thanks button if you're watching a rebroadcast. So that's all I got for you, friends. I'd like to tell you when I'll be back, but due to the inclement weather and everything else going on, I'm not sure. I will likely be back for at least one more show this weekend. Maybe we'll do one of those dreaded panel shows. Well, dreaded by me, but you guys seem to like them, so I keep doing them. You never know what's going to happen on those things, and they get so chaotic. I also thought that maybe we'll do a call-in show again, but take one person at a time. So those are a little easier to manage and don't get quite so chaotic. Kind of prefer those. Maybe we'll do that. Let me know what you think in the live chat or the comments. Would you like to see a panel show this weekend? For those unaware, a panel show is where anybody can join. And sometimes we have 10 people on here with me at once, and it gets a little nutty, especially when we do open topics like we will likely be doing. So I thank each and every one of you for joining us. We had great attendance, great show attendance tonight, which I'm always happy to see. So that's all I got for you. I guess to wrap things up, I'm going to leave the ball in Mr. Charles Hall court. It's his responsibility to refute what our research efforts have uncovered here. If we are wrong, I will shake that man's hand and admit I was wrong, but I really don't think that I will be apologizing for anything that we've said on tonight's broadcast, given that we have myself and two other researchers all found the same results. Also, if I were to be found to be wrong, nobody could really blame me. We went with the evidence that Mr. Hall provided, and I believe we went above and beyond to try to get to the truth of his military service claims. We will have an update on this story. Let me know if you would like to see more information on this story, or if you think, hey, we've busted this one, move on to the next one. Let me know what you think in the comments. Yeah, so that's all I got for you, friends. Yeah, that's all we got. I'm going to bounce on out of here. So until next time, friends, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you.